Hello everyone, my name is Rochelle Innocent and I'm the founder and CEO of Project Purpose. Welcome to our channel. Our community is focused on fostering the intellectual and character development in children. We do this through our parent-child workshops that are focused on 4 themes: autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept, in order to cultivate grit, perseverance, and resilience in each child. At Project Purpose, our overarching mandate is to renew and rebuild family, community, and relationships. Our different social media platforms provide us with an opportunity to have discussions and to create space on all topics that relate to family, community, and relationships with ourselves as well as with others, with a primary focus on mental health and education. More precisely, the ways that the institutions of mental health and education play a role and have played a role in our societies at large. These discussions and debates provide us with an opportunity to think critically about what needs to change within these structures for us to live up to our bold slogan: support, protect, and empower each child through youth-focused development, better known as leadership in juvenescence. We recognize that in valuing our children's leadership potential, this also translates as recreating and co-creating environments, both socially and politically, that will enable our children to thrive. For those of you who are particularly keen on the topic, we also write thought pieces every other Sunday, and we actually just dropped a thought piece this past Sunday, so be sure to meander over to the website and check out our online content. Now, if it is the case that you are looking for a listening alternative, well, we're available on 12 different podcast platforms for your listening leisure, and we provided you with access to the links in the description down below. Now, as is the convention, be sure to subscribe, hit that post notification bell so that you are aware of every time we post. And of course, if you like our conversations and you want to keep them going, like, comment, and share this segment. Let's get into it. Allô les meufs et les mecs. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today the topic of discussion is mental wellness. And on the topic of mental wellness this week, I'm going to be providing 3 frames of mind or frames of reference that enable us to make beauty from the ashes. Yeah, so I think this is an important conversation. I'm going to keep it light because all of us have experienced disappointments, loss, periods where, things that we didn't want to end have ended. And sometimes the mindset that we take, the way that we look at things can make that process more arduous, more painful than it needs to be. So I'm going to give my top 3 ways to make beauty from ashes. So to make something good out of a bad situation, or for another idiomatic phrase, to make lemonade out of lemons, if that's what life hands you. And just before continuing the conversation, I'm going to apologize if you hear any background noise. I have been fighting with the air conditioning fan, and clearly that is a battle I have lost, though I will try to do my best to edit out any background noise that might be distracting in this video. So without further preamble, I'm going to jump right into 3 frames of mind that will enable us to make beauty of the ashes, because life is going to involve dealing with loss on a cyclical basis, and I think sometimes we set ourselves up to suffer more than we need to because of the lens that we take and the perspective that we take when we're cycling through these processes of loss, of endings, and of grief. And I have to say, I've experienced my fair share of disappointments. Now, disappointments can happen in a variety of different settings and situations, and I feel that I have really honed in on how to bounce back fairly quickly from disappointments, and that's not because I'm particularly resilient or particularly strong mentally, but mostly because of the mental frames that I take on by way of disappointments. And I think that the one frame that is very underutilized, that a lot of us overlook, but it would be really important and helpful when it is the case that we're dealing with ashes, so an ending that is, discombobulating, or an ending that was unexpected, or a disappointment that, just caught us off guard and blindsided us, is that these things happen to everyone. And And that's not to diminish the experience and some of the jarring effects of that experience, but disappointments are a part of life. And sometimes what's very jarring about the disappointment is this assumption, this underlying assumption that it couldn't or wouldn't happen to us, that we are somehow exempt from experiencing loss, grief, and disappointment. And I'm here to say that mindset is not helpful to you. I think that it's very important that we all recognize that we will each experience a fair share of disappointment, whether we're trying to grow and push through different levels or not. Like maybe we're trying to keep things as steady as possible. Disappointments are inevitable. And I think sometimes, just based on conversations I've had and just different stages and phases that I've personally been in, it is the expectation that we are exempt from experiencing disappointments in certain areas that make bouncing back from that disappointment incredibly challenging for some of us. And I'm here to say, I think if we all just expect that disappointment is part of the gamut, is part of this thing we call life, then it's not going to rock us so hard. And you would think that it was simple, but a lot of people are very shocked by experiencing disappointment because they just didn't think it would happen to them. They didn't think it could happen to them. And why not? It can happen to any of us. In fact, it will happen to all of us in different ways and varying degrees, but just I think when it comes to giving yourself the opportunity to see the beauty in endings or see the beauty in loss, because it's there, is just to recognize that disappointments are part of life and there is always something to be learned, something to be gained, some insight to be sort of absorbed in those experiences if we're not just too hung up over the fact that it happened to us. I think that that's really very important. And the note that I wanted to get across in my first point. My second point is that endings are a form of beginnings. And I think sometimes we're so wrapped up in what's ended and what's gone that we forget about what's left and we discount and we devalue what we have that's remaining. And it's a really interesting thing to experience because it is in retrospect that we recognize what it is that we still had available to us, but we were blind to it because we were too busy sort of grieving over what was lost. And I'm not here to say that we don't grieve. I think that we all need to give ourselves the opportunity, the space to grieve, but I think we need to always keep in mind that everything in life is temporal. And I think I'm trying to make this really light, but some of us just assume that certain things, because we like them, because we're used to them, because we're familiar to them, that makes them a constant in our life. And I think the only constant you have in life is yourself. And everything beyond yourself is subject to change. And that is a perspective that I took very early, very young in my life, that everything that I experience in my life is subject to change, that there is no real constant in life. Even my experience of myself is not constant. I look in the mirror, I'm a different person even physically than the person I looked at 10 years ago. I just don't see any constancy really in like my physical form and my experience in this physical body and anything really on earth. So it makes me appreciate things more. And I think sometimes we take things for granted because we assume that they are constant. And I think a great mental shift would be to just assume everything is temporary, but that doesn't mean we avoid life experiences. I mean, we lean into them because there's something to be gained in this experience that is happening right now for however long it's going to happen without me needing to ruminate on, hey, it's going to end at some point, or fixate on, hey, how can I keep this going into the future? Better to just enjoy this moment now while it's here, while it lasts, and when it's gone, to recognize it's gone for a reason and there's something left in the midst of that loss for me to anchor onto or for me to sort of leverage as I step into whatever that new normal is going to be. But just recognize that everything in life is temporal, everything in life is temporary, and it's not a big traumatizing event if you normalize the fact that everything is temporary. And if we normalize being in the present and enjoying the experiences that we have right now for the time that we have them and not allowing ourselves to get caught up in the loss that we will inevitably and eventually experience, because those are just simply part of life. Which brings me to my third point, and that's the loss of all the different versions of ourselves. And I have made a reference to this a lot of times because it is something that I find is an evolving theme in people who are trying to kind of build a better framework for their mental wellness. And I think sometimes what keeps us in negative cycles is this ruminating in the past or fixating on the future and not just recognizing that who we are right now is temporary. The identity shifts that we're going through, they're temporary. Our evolution is always a progression. There's always momentum there. Even if we don't feel the momentum, there's always things happening. Time does not wait for anyone. So enjoy the version of yourself that you are right now, even if this version of yourself isn't one you particularly enjoy, just based on the setting and the context that has brought this person up and about, because they're also not forever. Who we are is subject to shift, is subject to change with the experiences, with the relationships, with the dynamics dynamics and the different settings that we're in. So we just need to just enjoy everything while it lasts. And it also gives us the opportunity to make beauty out of ashes, because hey, bad times don't last. Good times don't last. Rough times don't last. But sometimes we allow ourselves to be stuck in a situation that is maybe not the best for us because we're just assuming this constancy that is a fallacy. There is nothing constant about constancy, and it's very important that we just let go of this idea that we can hold on to things that are temporal, and everything in this lived experience, including ourselves, are temporal. So I wanted to jump in and have that conversation. I do think that the underlying sort of theme of this message is just recognizing that loss is an experience that we're all going to be subject to. I think that making beauty of the ashes is recognizing there's beauty in loss. There's an art about loss, about grief, about endings that is very beautiful and is very unspoken when we allow ourselves to step out of it, recognizing it's a stage and phase that we're going to go through cyclically throughout life. And I think sometimes we lose sight of who we are becoming in those losses because we're so immersed in the tragedy of the ending that we lose sight of the beginning. And I think that the beauty in the ashes is the beginning that kind of sneaks its way into our lives and then becomes the new normal without us even realizing it, because we're kind of stuck in the past or ruminating in a future that is not ours to control. So I wanted to jump in here, give you that perspective, maybe try it out. Again, this is a framework shift. This is a mindset shift, just adopting this idea that everything is temporary, so enjoy everything while it lasts. And when it's time for it to go, let go. And that doesn't mean you don't grieve, but it means you grieve in a healthier way because you anticipate and the fact that you cannot control the things that come into your life for the most part, and the things that are subject to leave, because everything is subject to change. Hopefully that is a note that is helpful to you. I hope it's not too much of a sombering note. I think it's a very realistic way of viewing things, and it helps me just bring clarity to my own life. Like when I'm experiencing a disappointment, I allow myself to go through the grief, but I also anticipate that grief is just part of my becoming, as part of my story. And it's something that I'm going to look on and recognize that I did do the work and make the effort to stay aware and to see, well, what beginning is also built into this ending? Like, what do I have to look forward to despite what I'm mourning? And I wanted to give you that perspective as well. Now, before letting you go, I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that we will be going live at least twice a month for the foreseeable future on our Facebook page. Now, these events are paid events, so if you do see yourself participating in our community on an ongoing basis, then I do suggest that you take a look at one of our package plans. Yes, so we do offer package plans over and above our live events that give you unlimited access to those events, as well as access to webinars and workshops over and above those events, taking on a skill-based approach to derive more meaning and fulfillment out of life. Now, for those of you who are concerned about the pricing of our programs and of our services, please don't be. We've just incorporated a new payment solution, Afterpay, that gives you the opportunity to pay in 4 installments over a period of 6 weeks. Very excited to introduce that, and of course, more to come as we continue to grow and evolve as a community. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you are still here, subscribe, leave your note on how you make beauty out of the ashes. I would love to hear from you. I think all of us would have a hot take worth sharing here. And follow us on all of our social media platforms. We look forward to engaging with you, to growing with you as you become part of our Game Changer community. And we look forward to seeing all of you very soon. We'll talk to you later.